Let's dive into the reason that your calves are not growing in the gym. And really, this could be taken to be anything else that's not growing in the gym. It's probably a combination of a few things. So first and foremost, let's just talk about your calves in general, right? Why, and this is something that Alex Hormozy has talked about previously, and other people with large calves that had small calves previously. The reason why your calves are not big, right, is by very nature that you're not doing enough volume, right? You're not doing enough volume of calf work. You're not doing a high enough frequency of calf work, right? And you're also doing it fatigued and against human behavior. Okay? What do I mean by this? And you can take this away from calves and put it on chest or biceps or triceps or any other part of the body. You can look at it being, let me make sure this is recording. Okay, we're good. You can put this on any other part of the body that you want to grow that you haven't been able to get to grow. Most of the time, right, the first thing that happens is, right, you want to grow something and we position it anti what would get us to do it more. So, for example, if your calves are small, right, do we think it's a great idea for you to be in a position where you're doing it at the end of the workout, after you're already fatigued, after you've done an hour and a half of work, after you've done 45 minutes of work, after you sweat, your heart rate's been up, you've pushed heavy weight? Like, do we think that we're going to get the most out of it if we're doing it at the end? The answer is no. What I would recommend that you do is you put the weaknesses, first. I recommend you put the weaknesses first. So if you have, hey, my arms are not as big as I want them to be, put your arms first. Do all the volume on your arms first. If you're doing, if you're doing bis and tris, right? Cool. You have a whole day for that. But if you're rolling it into more of a full body split and you have, hey, you're going to do, 15, you're going to do 3 to 5 sets of each muscle group per day because you're doing a full body split. Do the thing that you suck at the most first. Why? Because there's a high probability that if you do it at the end of the session, a lot of times you're not going to want to do it. If you don't want to do something, if you don't want to work a certain muscle group and you're in the gym and you're having to do it against your will, there's a high likelihood that you're a lot of times just not going to do it. Oh, I'll get it next time, or I'm too tired, or I don't want to do it, or like this isn't going to work for me today. That might just happen, right? That absolutely might just happen. And then on top of that, right, it's against you wanting to do it, one, because you're fatigued, and two, because you hate working that. But then you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, wah, I wish it was better. Well, it's not going to get better if you don't do something about it. It's kind of like anything. You got to be empowered to make decisions to improve yourself, to go down a path where something grows. And for a lot of people, it's calves. Some people, it's arms. Some people, it's back. Some people, it's chest. Some people, it's neck. Some people, it's quads. Some people want juicier quads, but they're not ever going to be a quad father because they never do any flexion and extension and high volumes at moderate to high weights. They don't go to full range of motion. Like, there's a lot of reasons that it can happen, but most of the time it's against human behavior, right? You're just not in a position where you're setting yourself up for success. You're in fact setting yourself up for failure and an out, right? For a great example of this is my girlfriend is terrible, or used to be terrible, is not terrible now. If you're watching this, my dear, you're not terrible now, but you used to be terrible at assault bike. You used to be absolutely terrible at anything aerodyne. 100% atrocious. You hated it. You gave minimal to no effort. You were terrible at it, but now you're moderate at it. Why? Because I've put it at the front of your workout so many times that you have to get used to it. You do not have the ability to avoid it. You cannot just pussyfoot on top of the aerodyne bike. Echo, Assault, Schwinn, whatever. I like the Echo better. I think it's the hardest one. But you can't pussyfoot on it because I put it so frequently in what you're doing that you have to get better at it, or you just have to know that it's going to suck. And so sometimes those are synonymous, but it's against human behavior, right? I don't put it at the end of the workout because then I know that you have an out. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm already fatigued. Or I already did so much work. Like, whatever. It's a little bit more difficult, right? I don't want to give you that out. So we go with human behavior instead. And then also we're fatigued. And so sometimes you've already used those muscles, right? You've already kind of got a little bit of a pump doing other compound movements. And so you can't isolate it because you're already a little bit tired, right? You start to compensate. But then, secondarily there, On top of it, so you got the against human behavior, right? You got the fatigued, right? But then let's talk about frequency and then volume fourth. The frequency, a lot of time because you're against human behavior, you're in a position where you don't do it frequent enough. You do 15 to 20 sets on your back every week, right? With a variety of movements, from lat pull downs to pull ups to bent over rows to gorilla rows or gorilla cleans, however you want to call it, with kettlebells. You do that, and so you love doing that and you love adding that work in there, but you don't do that ever. You don't ever do that with calves. Why? Because you don't like it. So it makes sense that you wouldn't do it. It absolutely makes sense. But because it makes sense that you wouldn't do it, why the heck would you take it seriously and add it more frequently than you have to? Right? If you set constraints where you have to do these things X amount of times a week, then you will get better at them. And oftentimes when we get better at something, what happens? We like it more because we're better at it. So we gotta get a higher frequency there, right? And not in every single session, but just a higher frequency than once a month and expect for us to grow, because we don't do the same thing with other parts of our body. And then number 4 is volume. Like when you do them, are you doing one set unweighted, right? Are we doing one set of tib raises on the wall? Like, oh, my knees hurt. Oh, I've got shin splints. Or I always have shin splints when I start running, but I'm never going to do tib raises. Or I'm never going to do knees over toes split squats, or I'm never going to do Patrick step ups, or I'm never going to do, calf raises itself, or deficit calf raises, single or double leg. Like if you're not going to do the volume that's required to get better, you can't sit here and complain about the downstream effects of that. Like it's literally impossible for you to just all of a sudden get better. Now, can you get some benefit from running, from other things? Yeah, from doing other movements, for sure. But are you dependent on compound movements to grow your biceps? Like compound movements only, no isolation work to grow your biceps, to have a bigger size? Right? Because we're not talking about calf capability, right? Ability for agility and what have you, and maybe that's you, but for most people, it's size. So we're talking about size, right? What do you do to get more size? Well, you do more targeted volume on the muscle group that we're talking about, right? Yes, you do compound movements for strength. Yes, you do compound movements also for some size. But if you wanted just size, aren't you just going to isolate some movements? Like we do it for every other body group or body muscle group. So why don't we do it for calves or anything that we want to grow, right? And it's because we do it against human behavior. So if you make that one subtle shift and go towards human behavior, right? Hey, do it when we're fresh, do it at the beginning of the workout, do it as a warm-up, well then boom, we'll get it in because it's something that we start to do, that we become part of our process, right? That becomes part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And so we do that and it's game over. It's a completely different world. And I think that is the way that we need to attack anything that's a weakness, because if we do it first, then boom, we're in a position where we'll do it more frequently. And so with human behavior, not fatigued, higher frequency, higher volume when we have frequency. And you should be good. And I know Alex has talked about this. I know Chris Williams has talked about this. I know other people have talked about this, but I think this is important for us to understand, especially people that don't live, eat, sleep, breathe, and dream about fitness, that like if you have a weakness, just hit it first. There's a higher likelihood that you get it done, and there's also a higher likelihood that you do more frequency of it, and a higher likelihood that like it's over before you even get to the fun stuff in your session. Hope that helps. That'll be easy.